Can you all see that? Sorry,
I
I
can
don't know
see
if you're
your,
muted.
yeah, I can see your slide deck.
Okay, cool. Okay, so thank you all for coming. We're going to talk about CodeceptJS. It's a 101 version of it, just a primer. Um, and I'll explain more as we go. My name is Jon Nutting. I'm a front-end software engineer. My website is j-nut.com, JNut. If I ever am a DJ, that's what it's going to be, JNut. I thought I'd spare you all my hobbies. I've got lots of them, like cardboard sculpting and chess and blah, 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 blah. But anyway, we could talk about all that later. I'm sure you don't care about that. You want to know about Codecept. So let's move on. All right, so what is E2E, end-to-end testing? So essentially, it's just basically creating a testing process for from beginning to end, and that could be different different situations. But as far as software testing, um, it it's testing the workflow from the beginning to the end. And so I know as developers, many of us are have already thought about automation and realize the pros and cons. And I think many of us already know about automated testing versus manual testing, but maybe some of us haven't yet dove into that. And so hopefully with this presentation, I can at least get you started and using Codecept. So some of the pros and cons, I know this is pretty common sense, but with automated testing, the pros are you get faster feedback. You can create reusable testing. It's more efficient. It's precise. The cons are that it must be created, it must be taught, and it's not very creative. So it doesn't handle edge cases very well. Manual testing, pros are you could test outside of the box, test with variations and better at finding edge cases. You can test more thoroughly that way. The cons are requires training, it's more prone to mistakes, and takes longer. So what is CodeceptJS? I'm going to show you here. Okay, so say we're in a situation where we just created this app right here. Can you all see the AngularJS to-do app? Okay, got a thumbs up. Now, this is a pretty complex. I mean, it's not really complex, but when you think of it, a to-do app is pretty simple. But if you were going to test this, how many different situations do you have to think of to go through? And it's pretty, if you were going to do that manually, you have to painstakingly type in all these different situations and prepare for that. But this is where Codecept comes in handy. So what I'm going to show you really quick is this is, if you go to codecept.io/quickstart, this helps you get started. It's very easy to install. I did find, I've already installed it, but let me explain something. I'm on a Mac, and theoretically, you're supposed to just simply enter this command into the terminal, and that will install it for you. What I had to do is run this command and then go down to Playwright, and I'll explain more what Playwright is, and then install this after. And then after those two steps, and you kind of walk through, and I can show you at the end of this presentation if you want. It's pretty easy. But to spare you the wait time right now, I have already done that. And so what I'm going to do is basically open up my terminal here. I'm going to point my terminal to my demo. And then I'm going to run this command right here. So what's nice is Codecept helps you get started right away with a demo. And there are 3 different methods here. So if I want to run the demo straight right here, what it will do is it will open up a separate browser window. And then in the terminal, you'll see all the instructions and all the text go. It's basically a log of what it's testing, and you'll see the results here. You can, if you want, you can run it in headless mode where it won't pop up the browser, and then you'll just see all the testing results in this here. But I'm going to show you something new that Codecept's working on, where they have this UI system here. And so if I just simply run this command, then it uses Electron to open up this little window here. And you'll see basically these are the tests that it's going to run. And what it's going to do is, here, I'll just show you actually. It's going to go through pretty quickly. A lot of it will be too fast to see, but you'll kind of see the process of what it's doing here. So basically, this is just going through, and it has these pre-programmed tests for testing this to-do app here. So as you can see, there's different string types and formats, and you want to see whether it passes or fails. And here off to the right, you can see that we have a fail here. Let me move this over a little bit. And so this will end here in just a minute here, but it's pretty amazing. So as you can probably tell by now, it's like, okay, this would be really nice to have test our apps. And one thing let me say about testing too is a lot of times testing gets neglected because we're too busy to devote time to building out these tests. But yeah, if you found that you have to test something over and over again, this is where you could really see the benefits of that. Because imagine trying to manually plug all that in over and over again to do that. Okay, so here we can see the results of the test here. For the ones where you have a red indicator, you can see what happened here. And so it said that it failed, that there were no steps matching. So what probably was in here, I know Codecept went through an upgrade, and they're redoing some of the documentation, and also maybe there were some changes in here. But what's good about this actually is sometimes, excuse me, like in our daily life, sometimes our apps do change by someone else and we don't know it. And so this is where it would be good, where it would catch something like that, and you could go in and then change that. Here you can kind of see, I'll talk more about this. This is the syntax of how you create a test, and I'll go over that in just a couple minutes here. But we could see that this test failed because we got an undefined value here. So it's pretty cool. You can see that there were 16 tests that were successful and 3 that were not. And you can just kind of go through and each one check out how is successful. So let me dive into explaining more about the syntax here. So here you can also see that it basically did the same thing. So this is what I was talking about earlier. If you just simply run the demo without the :UI, this is what the test will look like here. And this is what it looks like for headless state too. It's just you won't see the test running in the browser. This headless state is great for like if you have like shell scripts, or you want to have regression testing on your server. Obviously, you don't need a browser to pop up for doing those backend kind of tests. Okay, so me get back to here. Okay, so as you could probably tell, some of the downside to automation is that it's not automatic right away. It's not out of the box. You don't just wave your magic wand and say, go. The downside is that you have to manually create it and you have to train it and tell it what to do. So that's one thing. But actually what's nice about Codecept is it makes it really easy to do that. So earlier methodologies of testing were more time consuming, and so we're kind of entering into a brighter future with automation and AI and machine learning and all kinds of things like that, and it just continues to get easier and easier. So that's the good news on that. But here's a funny example of, I think you could read it, but like the robot needing help ticking the "I am not a robot" box. Indiscrimination against robots. So some of the great features about Codecept, I'll just kind of explain some of these briefly, and then I'll show you more in a minute. But so like here, scenario driven, you could write acceptance tests from user's perspective. So it's nice as I work with Nolan at DistroKid, and what we'll get is a ticket based on a user story, and it will say, we want this changed. We want this situation for the user to walk through. There's different ways that it's written. And what we could do is write our tests that match the story, and it makes it really nice for being able to run the test and show success, 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 and also it helps for creating a template for our QA testers as well. So once we write the scripts, we can just easily translate it over to manual testing as well. And so someone can just kind of walk through the steps and go, okay, we need to do this and this and this and this. So that's pretty nice. Codecept has rich locators, so it makes it really easy to be able to it's almost like jQuery or using query select and things like that, where you can easily find DOM objects, or you can locate elements via CSS, or here you could even use XPath. I'm not familiar with XPath, but it's just another way for being able to identify objects in the UI and reference them, and then be able to manipulate them. And I'll show you more in a minute on that. I'm going to kind of skip through some of these here. It's great. You can do parallel testing. You can have multiple tests running side by side. It's driver agnostic. So basically this sits on top of different testing platforms like Playwright or Puppeteer and WebDriver and so forth. So you might have a favorite one you want to use. And this sort of just sits on top of that and has a common language. So it makes it easy to learn Codecept. And then you can swap out whatever driver you want to use underneath that. It's also modular. You can use page objects and create reusable tests and kind of build those, stack those up together. There's support with reporting and let's see, even reduced flakiness. So anyway, let me go back here, sorry. I'll show you more about interactive debugging. There's web and mobile testing, and you can also test REST APIs and do multi-session testing. Also off to the side, what's really nice is Codecept has a very active GitHub community of contributors, and has MIT license, so it's free. Here's a basic um, architecture view. These are some of the drivers that it was talking about, how Codecept sits on top of WebDriver or Protractor, Nightmare, Puppeteer. In here, this hasn't been updated with Playwright. Playwright came out earlier this year. And a little backstory to that is I started, right now, we're currently on CodeceptJS version 3, I believe. Not too long ago is version 2. And version 2 had worked with Puppeteer as a default. And Puppeteer was created by Google and leveraging Chromium. And so it made it really nice where you can do some great testing using the Chromium browser. Whereas some of these other ones like WebDriver, it requires Selenium servers and all these other things, or like Nightmare requires Electron. The great thing about Playwright now is that some of the main contributors to Puppeteer moved over to Microsoft and then started or created Playwright. And so Playwright is essentially Puppeteer, but doesn't only support Chromium. It also supports Firefox, and they're working on expanding the support for other browsers and also mobile devices. And so here, in essence, is the syntax as I showed earlier. It's pretty easy. You can create a feature and then have different scenarios. So something you want to test in particular on the feature, and a feature may have multiple scenarios, so you can stack different scenarios. But in this case, it's checking the scenario, create a new store. So what do you do to create a new store? In here, they're applying a faker.lorem slug to a value to a variable store name. So it's pretty cool. You can have faker data or mock data in here. And in here, you'll see a whole lot of I dot. And that you can customize to anything, but in this case, it's just, I think it's like an object that they just apply these different methods to. And it makes it pretty easy. So in this case, it's like, I don't see store name dot settings. So that dot settings is a class. And what it's looking for is like under the the object or the element with the class name settings, do I see the store name? And in this case, they don't want to see that. So it's nice because you can check to see if something exists on the page, or you can check to make sure that it doesn't exist. And so that comes in handy. Sometimes you want some things on visible, and sometimes you don't. Here I click. And actually, I think what I'm going to do, rather than go through all of these, I'll show you another demo here. But as you can see, you can fill in fields, you can select drop downs, you can retry things, you can wait. And if you go on to the website, there's a whole lot of list of things that you can do. But I'm going to jump over really quick to show you this other demo here. Okay. This essentially is these are the files here for very basic structure. In this case, the main thing you need is like it runs off Node, so you'll need Node modules, a package file. Here you could get away with not having steps, and this is just a part of the introductory install, and it'll walk you through, and I can show you at the end of this presentation how easy that is. But the main part are these two files right here. So you'll see codecept.conf.js and then in this case, I named this specifically demo_test. The really cool thing about this too is you can stack different files. So in this case, here under tests, it looks for any file with _test. So what I could do is I can have demo1, demo2, demo3, and or feature1, feature2, feature3. And then just as long as it's _test, it will go through and just roll through each of the steps on all those files. But as you can see, this is pretty simple here. I have just these steps. I'm doing a demo and I'm testing something. This could be whatever you want it to be named. So I'm going to run this really quick and show you. And so the command for that, I have in here, all I have to do is run npx CodeJS run -- steps. So what this is doing is going to my website, it's resizing the window, and it's just waiting a little bit. It's actually getting cut off a little bit on the bottom, but there's a little button on the bottom. And I was able to click that button, and then it scrolled down to here. And then what it's doing is taking a screenshot and then scrolling down here to this section. And then I'm going to automatically click on this button. I didn't click it. I'm having the script do it. So sorry, I was just pointing to it. And let's see. Oh, so what I did actually, okay, it's waiting for me. I have a pause in here. And so let me just show you this really quick. Oops, not that. That was the older one. Okay, so as it went through each of these steps, it showed me that I am on this page. It's my website URL. I resize window. So it's going through and showing the success of each of these. And then what it's doing is pausing right here. And this makes it nice because you can interact with it. So it's just waiting for me to type something. In this case, I'm going to use this to click on this. So as you can see, the text right here is more creative examples. So all I have to do is just go click more creative examples and hit enter. And so it just ran that in there. And then if I want to scroll to the bottom, I could just, oops, I already have I. I can just hit that button. And so it happened really quick. But what's nice about that is you can have it test scrolling to different positions or scrolling to different elements, and you can, because up here you can see I was able to resize the window to here. So what I've done is I was able to test to see if something's responsive as well, what it looks like, and then I can take a screenshot. And so in here, I saved screenshot and I named it this. So I'll show you. All that does is then automatically put it into the output folder. And so when I did that before, here's the screenshot right here. And there's also ways where you can actually take video recording of the test as well. And there's more advanced features where you could even have like the ideal image and take a screenshot, and then you can compare the two screenshots to see if things are proper or not. So you could actually do pattern recognition and compare images. So it's pretty cool that way too. And then let's see. Here are some links. There's there's a pretty good amount of help out there. Like I said before, they just switched to version 3 and they did some restructuring. And so some of the information here is a little outdated still. Um, and it and there's not a lot of YouTube videos to talk about Codecept. There are some here or there. They're talking about older versions. But what you can do is, like, for example, because Codecept sits on top of Puppeteer, there are more videos on Puppeteer. And then now there's more videos coming out on Playwright. There's also several videos on WebDriver and Nightmare and some of the other the drivers. And so what you could do is kind of learn how to use those systems, and they're very powerful. There's a lot of things you could do on that. And then once you know the syntax or the methods built into those, most likely Codecept will support that as well. Um, so I'm going to just click here and show you. Okay, as I mentioned, we have here the quick start guide. So to install, you just simply run this command in the terminal. You obviously want to create a new directory and point to that directory and then run that. And like I said, on Mac at least, I don't know if it's just a Mac thing, but or maybe the system, Playwright is the default driver. So then you want to install Playwright after that. This one command was supposed to do that, so maybe it works on Windows or Linux. I haven't tested that. But anyway, here's some of the basics. And you can kind of walk through that. So it does have a pretty good, it has pretty good documentation for initially getting started. And here's some of the graphics that I showed you in architecture. These are the different things. So when I mentioned Playwright, Playwright specifically has some commands that you can use. And this just talks about how you can configure it. So so say, for example, I wanted to change and not use Playwright, I could just switch this to Puppeteer instead. Or in this case, I'm using the default Chromium browser. I could switch this to Firefox. And there's even some mobile support too. So you can test that way. Here are some actions that are specific to Playwright. Also, the documentation, I found the documentation a little better with Puppeteer, but most of the commands that I saw in Puppeteer, I tested it in Playwright and they still worked. Like, for example, the scroll to and the save screenshot. So, but like I said, Playwright's the default. So I'm just sticking with that. I've been enjoying it. But I guess some of the older systems, like for example, at work where we have some tests that run on Nightmare, and so I had to learn a little bit of the methods for that. But for the most part, what Codecept puts on top of it translates down. So for most of what you want done, it will just be learning what's built into Codecept. And then, but each testing system has further capabilities, and so you can explore those as well. Okay, so here, this website, I'm not going to go through the whole website because obviously there's a lot of information here, but you can kind of see how, the main part is getting started, but then there are things where you can create custom helpers. So it's pretty nice because because it's JavaScript based, you can write your own custom functions to try different things or to get information and manipulate strings or pull data from here. In this case, there's API hand or helpers, or you can do REST calls and or mock data. But mainly for getting started, there's locators, as I was talking about. So it's you can reference images, like say you want to fill in a field. It's the input type password and you're plugging in that. So we basically have to train Codecept to reference certain objects on the screen and then tell it what to do with those objects. And so in this case, I see element. It's an element with the class name profile within an element of that has user. And so you can also reference by ID. So it's very similar to like jQuery, how it references DOM objects. And then here I mentioned XPath. So I don't know if any of you've worked in XPath. So it's similar, but different syntax.
I've worked in that before. It's sort of like for tracing through XML files. It's just a notation for going down things like that. So it's probably more useful for sites that are a little bit older when people were doing XHTML quite a bit, and those all had to be valid XML documents. You could use XPath to traverse up and down XHTML documents pretty easily.
Nice. I like that it allows just for click, and you can just simply type in the text. It doesn't always work, so that's one thing going through here. Is some things that have been a little challenging to be able to find a reference for an object, but in this case, like I can't remember exactly, but there was some radio buttons, and they didn't have a class name or an ID on it, and I don't remember. It seems like it would be really easy to still reference it, but it's a little challenging. I think part of it was dynamically generated as well. But anyway, I was able to just simply in radio buttons. You don't click. I think there's like check. I'll try to find. There's like select and anyway. Sorry, I'll have to look for that later. But I'm obviously still learning this as well. But the nice thing is it was pretty easy to get up and running, and then it's about the nuance of how advanced you are with this, and also getting better at like creating. Like one thing, I'm still a little bit of a newbie where I find myself not leveraging the power of the modular stack and creating reusable testing components. So that's my next step that I'm getting into, and also working more with mock data. But it is pretty cool though. I mean, you can find an element and check for the child and see if it has descendants, and see if something has text of this first, last. So it is pretty powerful, and you can even use like indexing, like the numbers, the element of at this position, and so I found that it's pretty easy to reference what you need. So that's basically that in a nutshell. I'm trying to think. There's TypeScript support, advanced usage, best practices. I'm not going to go through all that. But they do also have, under community, they have a good Slack channel and GitHub support and videos and examples. So let me jump back to So what is the future of automated testing? Robots take over the world. Just kidding. like I mentioned, Codecept has now V3, which includes Playwright, and that supports more browsers. And then they also have the Codecept UI tool that I showed you with Electron. You can download that as an app, and actually here you can see you can write tests this way. So instead of in the code like I was doing with I dot typing all that stuff, there's more of a UI. And um, so if you just go back to the website, it will show you how to install that. So I'd like to end with this quote: automation applied to an inefficient operation will magnify the inefficiency. That's by Bill Gates. So one thing that I found with writing these test scripts and stuff is that it does really force you to observe and analyze what you're creating. So it kind of really helps to understand the architecture and what you're trying to get done. And so I found that even in writing some of these scripts, it's like, what do I need to test here? Forces me to ask then for clarification in the requirements of like, oh, what happens when I click on this? What's supposed to happen? And how do I write that? And how do I document that? And anyway, so it just helps sort of, with my ADD, it really helps organize my thoughts. And so I've actually been having fun with it. So that's all I have. If you guys want, I can show you how easy it is to install. I could just walk through that really quick. Do I have any head nods or anything?
Up to you, sir.
Okay, I'll just
I'd
do
like
that
to
really
see
quick.
a walkthrough.
Yeah, I'll just show you how easy it is to install. Okay. Let me just I'm going to use the cheat sheet here, quick start, because I don't have the syntax memorized. Okay, so I'm just going to create a new folder here, and it can be named anything. I'll just call it test, and it's empty. I'm going to open up the terminal window here, and let me get out of here. Clear that. And I don't know if you guys are used to working in terminal windows. I used to be intimidated by it, but just stick with it. It's not so bad. I'm definitely not a master at it, but it's at least more comfortable to work in. Okay, so CD is just, what is it, change directory, I think it stands for. And I'm just going to point to this folder. In Mac I can just drop and drag instead of typing in where that's located. And so this is now pointing to this. There's nothing in here, but I'm just going to run this now. I should say, I think most of us know whenever something is node based, you'll want to have node installed and be able to create like or be able to pull in npm packages and so forth. But I'm going to just paste this command here. So it's doing its thing. I'm curious though if any of you guys try on a Windows machine, I'm curious if it goes ahead or if it will do the Playwright install. Now, if I were to try to run this demo, it wouldn't work for me. So what I have to do is then, like I said, go back to here and then run the Playwright. So this is going to install Playwright. Okay, and so that should work now. So if I run this, let's test real quick. I'm not going to walk through the whole demo, but it should open up now the window, the UI. Yeah. Okay. So all I would do is hit play here, and then it would run this. But now to create your own custom stuff, that's easy. Now that we have everything installed here, all we have to do is, what's the command here? Sorry. Oh, we run this. So we're just going to initialize this project. And so it's asking you, where do you want these tests located? Yeah, I want this asterisk underscore test. Here you can choose whether you want playwright or different drivers. Yes, I want playwright. Where should log screenshots go? This was the output window that the output directory that I showed you. Yes, we'll just use that. Oh, it has a translation, which is nice. So, I probably couldn't do a demo on these other languages, sorry. But some of you might be interested in knowing that. I'm going to go ahead just use this as the base URL and show in the browser window, yes. And I'm going to use Chromium. Here you can do Firefox. But like I showed you, once you can make these changes in the config file. So you can just say yes to all the defaults. And then here's where it's asking you the feature, what you want that to be called. So I could just go test this. This is a feature. Actually, I'll just go feature 1. And then the file name. So I can change the file name if I want, but I'll keep that. And that's it. So file name. So if we look, it now has all these installed right here. And so here's our feature 01 test. And so if I want to open that up, I can just add anything in here now of like I dot M here. It's like I am on page. So this is, I want it to jump to GitHub.
Command tab, John. Command tab.
I know. I actually 3-finger. Sorry. You know me and my ADD. My mind's all over the place. Okay, and then so to run this command, it is just, let's see, what was that? It was, I think it was, let me see, was it npm? Actually, I had here. Oops. I don't have this memorized yet. npx. So when do you do npm and when do you do npx? Okay, here. Nolan, 3-finger. There we go. How's that?
Much better, kind of.
Okay, so all I have is one thing. It should open up the browser window with GitHub and say, yay, success. Or, let's see, feature 1, boom, there it is. I passed, I got okay. So here, if we had more steps, it would just stack and say whether the test failed or not. And so what we have going at DistroKid is we're very strict about having our code or having tests with our code. And so it is really nice. In one sense, it's like, the roll your eyes kind of thing of like, do we have to? And, that's been the problem though, as like I've worked at several places in the past and it was always like, oh, we're in a hurry. We don't have time for testing. We don't, and so we always neglected the tests or had someone else do it after the fact. And what's nice about this way is the testing gets done, and the code it makes it easy to do regression testing that way. And so we can just stack the features and all the tests and have it go through. So whenever we're doing a new release, we can just have it run through. And we also have manual testing as well. So obviously the robots aren't going to take over the world. But it makes it nice to be able to have that hybrid approach with the testing. So anyway, that's all I have. Does anyone have any other questions?
I did have a question regarding the XPath. I'm not sure, so I know that we could specify our own test cases, and then we could choose how to select certain locations that we choose to, whether it's via selector or via an XPath. But let's say I wanted to run like I guess like a default or like a demo or a built-in test, like just go through and just do these basic tests without adding anything of my own. Um, does Codecept itself, I guess, not sure if parse is the right word, or does Codecept itself grab XPaths and or have generic selectors already pre-built in, or is that something that I would have to go in and input myself?
That so yes and no. I mean, I guess that's interesting. So one of the downsides is you still have to tell CodeCept what to do, but that's an interesting concept of maybe when you're developing it, maybe you can write the code in a way where it can automatically grab, grab all the values, or just go through and loop through and, maybe grab all the divs or something to that effect. Fill in all the inputs with just test. Maybe you don't need something in particular. So it's sort of you'll probably have to be creative about how you architect or how you develop and figure out that way. The sad news though is that most likely Codecept doesn't know what to do. It just
Mhm.
sits there and you have to reference things of like, so for example, if I wanted, even on this page, it's like, say I wanted Codecept to scroll down to this window. So what I would have to do, it comes here on the top, but how do you even know you're on the right page? So what you could do is say, look for this text right here. So you could say, I see testing with Playwright. And then it will go, yes, check. Okay. Now I want it to scroll down to, but see, Codecept doesn't know where you want it to scroll down to. So I want it to scroll down to this window, or this little element here. So what I'd have to do is go inspect and go, okay, I want it to jump to, well, the problem with this class name is that it's repeated right here. So what I'd have to do is go, what's a unique identifier about this? And it looks like I could look for this text. So I could say, maybe look for this element with a class name of language dash JS, and then look for this text within there or something. So it's a little clunky in that sense where it's like, this is kind of time consuming. But in the long run, that's where it is. So in the short run, it's a lot of work getting set up, but not too bad. I mean, it could be a lot worse. Like, have you seen some tests out there that's pretty crazy and complex? This makes it pretty easy to just find what you're looking for and tell it what to do. But yeah, there's still that. I don't know. Did that answer your question? Or?
It did answer my question, but would you mind trying something out for me real quick? Just
Mm-hmm.
2 seconds on your screen. If we go back to you selecting where that div was with your inspection tool one more time, and if we just, so right there, if we right click the line that's highlighted, and then we went down to copy, and we grabbed the XPath where it says copy XPath there. I think if you selected any element and you just grabbed its exact XPath, I don't think you would have to scroll down and look for unique identifiers.
Oh, nice.
It would target just that right there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it actually might be quicker to do it via XPaths, and then you would just copy in the XPath into
Would
whatever
you
you're
do
filling out.
full XPath or XPath?
No, just the XPath to that exact element. So whatever you wanted to click, if you see in your DevTools right there on the top left-hand side, that little arrow next to those double boxes. So that selector right there, if we click that selector and then literally anywhere on the page, try the search box right there, and you click that and it took you there. And now it's highlighting that input field right there. If you right click that input field and you got the XPath of it, you'll always be right there. And you never have to look for, you wouldn't have to look for anything else. So it'd probably be a lot faster, a lot shorter, but this is amazing, man. I'm glad I turned up for this.
That was very smart.
I'm happy you guys showed me this. This is, thank you.
Well, thank you for that. That's actually definitely, that helps me. So awesome. Any other questions? Okay, well, I appreciate you guys coming. I can stop sharing, I guess. All right.
Thanks, John. That was great.
Yeah, thank you.
I will go ahead and stop the recording now.